Welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Steffanie Rivers. Come on into the conversation. We are multicasting on several platforms, so you could be watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. On whatever channel you're watching, we want to welcome you to the conversation. If you are one of the subscribers, thanks for your support. And if not, we know you're going to hear something that you want to like and share. And we're going to ask you to subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. So here's what we're talking about today. When the news broke about the suspicious death of Shanquella Robinson while she was on vacation in Mexico, everyone wanted answers, just like her family. When the video was leaked that showed Shanquella getting bullied, baited into a fight, and assaulted by people who were supposed to be her closest friends, many said those frenemies, dubbed the Cabo Six, should be held accountable for her death, maybe even murder charges. Now, nearly 8 months later, no arrests have been made, and it seems the FBI has washed their hands of the case. But here to talk about it is Sue Ann Robinson. She is the attorney for Shanquella Robinson's family, same last name, no relation. Thank you for making time, Attorney Robinson. How are you?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Stephanie. No problem. Obviously, it's after work hours, but we're still in the office, like always, never not working. So thank you for having me.
Definitely. So let's jump into it. Essentially, the latest from the FBI is that there will be no charges filed against any of the Cabo Six who were seen on the video assaulting Shanquella and or standing by while she was assaulted. Why would that be? What would be the reason that there would be no charges, not even, okay, no murder charges, no leaving the scene of a death investigation charges, something it seems like would come of that.
Okay, sure. Just to kind of go back a little bit, initially getting involved with going on a fact finding mission to Mexico, returning with the investigatory documents and understanding the extradition process, what we started advocating for on behalf of the family was two things. One was a high level of diplomatic intervention, which we requested the White House, the State Department become involved because they are essentially in charge of any transnational criminal case. A transnational criminal case is when a United States citizen is murdered abroad. So we first asked for a high level of diplomatic intervention, and secondly asked that once the FBI investigated and made their that the Mexican authorities had already advised during our fact-finding mission to Mexico that they had an arrest warrant, that they had completed an investigation, and that they had submitted all their documentation to Interpol and the FBI pursuant to the extradition treaty. Our second kind of ask was that the extradition proceedings be allowed to proceed. So from the beginning, we always kind of had in our mind that there would be two paths to justice in this case, two possible paths to justice. So we get to the point where the FBI says they are not filing charges under the treaty. And what's important to understand, and I know this is the people's movement, this is the people's case, and that's really why, I don't mind coming on YouTube and talking to people like yourself and other bloggers that are keeping Shanquella's name alive. The FBI can only file murder charges in a transnational criminal case. They can't charge assault. They can't charge Class H felonies, which a lot of people have been inboxing me and sending me messages. Why aren't the people being prosecuted in the United States for filming Shanquella in the nude or other charges like that? So I just want to be clear that if those particular crimes occurred in Mexico, the United States authorities would not be able to file any charges. The only charge they would be able to file under the United States treaty would be a murder charge. Okay. So the FBI has declined to file murder charges against any of the Cabo Six. And then to respond to your second part of your inquiry, why did they say that? Now, the FBI has a whole, they don't have a lot to work with in terms of their reasoning, because our position is that if they would have taken the case serious from day one, then they would have taken custody of Shanquella's body from the medical examiner and possibly examined the body while it was still in Mexico or immediately after it arrived in the United States prior to the embalming process, which obviously, or maybe not obviously for most people, if you don't watch, crime shows and all that stuff, compromises the body. So the FBI does their own autopsy after the body has been prepared by a Mexican funeral director pursuant to normal protocol, and then shipped here. Then the medical examiner in Mecklenburg County does their own examination, which is very limited. They can't do toxicology. They cannot examine individual organs, and it's extremely compromised because the body has already been embalmed. So the outcome of their autopsy is that Shanquella has no neck injury and that they cannot determine her cause of death, although they agree with the Mexican autopsy that she does have trauma to her head and that she has swelling on the brain, which could only be caused by head trauma. So the FBI essentially declined to file charges based on an autopsy that they did that was compromised, based on the fact that they could not determine or did not determine a cause of death, which they could not because the autopsy was compromised. They advised they would not be pursuing criminal charges, which is terrible in light of the fact that we have a video, there's witness statements. Obviously, there's an entire investigation completed by the Mexican authorities that identifies one of the suspects as the person who caused head trauma to Shanquella's body. Absolutely unacceptable by the family, by us who watch the video and see the injuries that are inflicted on Shanquella. Okay, so the FBI's determination and decision not to go forward with charges doesn't end the case. And I think that's very important for everyone to understand. That doesn't stop the train of justice for Shanquella's case, because extradition can still occur pursuant to the treaty. And the extradition means that Mexican authorities present their investigatory documents to the United States, the U.S. Department of Justice, and then the State Department approves it. And then once that happens, we would all see a very public case in federal court in North Carolina where a suspect is being extradited, and then they have the opportunity to hire an attorney in the United States to fight the extradition, to say Mexico's case doesn't have enough evidence or whatever the case may be. So we know no one is being extradited because there is no case occurring with any of the individuals who are named the Cabo Six currently in federal court in North Carolina. There has to be a very high level of diplomatic intervention in order for a transnational case, in order for extradition to occur. And that's where we are right now.
Wow. And you know what? You covered most of my questions in that statement. So thank you for that. Because you probably, and I've seen you on CNN and other shows, so you kind of know like what people are going to ask. But okay, so then the fact that, and you probably covered this, but I just want to make sure. So the fact that the Mexican authorities did issue warrants, because they did, correct?
The Mexican authorities have identified a suspect based on their own investigation that they did contemporaneous with the leak of the video. So initially they did a, a full scrub of the property right after Shanquella's death. Then when the video was leaked, they also saw it, just like we all did. And then they launched a criminal investigation. And that's when they brought back the staff in the villa and other witnesses in order to take statements from them.
So then my question would be, if they, because I was under the impression that the Mexican authorities issued, they requested extradition for the Cabo Six or a part of them to come back to the Mexico to like be questioned. So why wouldn't the FBI, what is that, like agree to apprehend them and take them back so they could at least be questioned,
Right.
because they left without even giving any statement?
Okay. Just to go back a little bit with respect to the facts. So initially, when Shanquella passed away, two of the individuals who were residing in the villa gave initial statements. Two of the travel mates, because I don't call them her friends because they weren't her friends. That's not factually correct.
Correct.
They weren't her friends. She didn't know the majority of the people. She only knew one person. So
Okay.
two of the individuals gave statements consistent with alcohol poisoning and what they did in regards to calling the doctor and things like that. So two people did actually give statements on scene. Then they asked to be transported to eat from the villa. And once they were transported to the restaurant, after that, they asked to be transported to the airport hotel and never returned to the villa. So the autopsy did not take place until the following day, and they were already gone. So what the Mexican authorities did was, once the video was leaked, they took statements of other individuals, the people who worked in the house and were present in the house, the maitre d', the concierge, the cleaning attendant, the chefs that attended to the villa. They took their statements, and as well as the doctor, of course, because the actual travel mates and people who were in the villa were already gone.
Okay, and that's news that to me, that the friend group, or the group that was traveling together, Shanquella only knew one of them, and the rest of them were not necessarily friends of hers. So she was in a group of people that she didn't really know or know well. So
Right. And the reason why I always correct journalists and people that discuss the case, and when they're saying, oh, these are her friends and things like that, is because I think it presumes a lot in the just in saying friends, that they're her friends. And I think people assume things about her and make judgments of her character based on that label. So that's why I always clarify, they're her travel mates. She was invited on the trip by someone who was her friend, or who she believed to be her friend. She was invited on the trip. Initially, there was going to be more people. Some of the people dropped out of the trip. And so one of her friends was like, hey, there's space on this trip. Do you want to come? Shanquella, being, an adventurous person who traveled a lot, was like, yes, I'm down to go. So the only one of the people on the trip was an actual friend or someone who her mom identifies as someone that she knew prior to going on the trip.
Okay, and then and so the news reports were saying that the person who kept coming by the house after the fact, when they returned, that probably was the person that was supposed to be her friend. So we're kind of,
Okay. Three individuals went to Miss Mondi's house. That's Salamandra Robinson, Shanquella Robinson's mother's home, when they returned. Three people. One of them was the individual that Miss Mondi knows, and then Winter and Dejanay Jackson and Khalil. went to Miss Mondi's house and brought Shanquella Robinson's luggage, I believe her cell phone, some other property that they had on them, gave it to Mrs. Robinson and advised her, gave their condolences, and then advised that the cause of death was alcohol poisoning. They were asked, was there a fight or was there an altercation, or was there some issue? Because there had been some rumors, I guess, that there was an issue on the trip, and they were advised by the two travel mates, no, there was nothing for them to tell because nothing happened. So 2 weeks later is when the video came out that showed different. And to me, that's a clear consciousness of guilt, a clear red flag to the FBI to say, why would these three people return, say the only cause of death or the only issue had to do with alcohol poisoning, when they're well aware that obviously Shanquella was attacked in the house. So to me, that's a clear red flag as to consciousness of guilt of the parties involved, because they knew about it and they could have told the mom. They could have been like, hey, we did overindulge. There was an issue with that. We think this is what led to her passing away. But just so that you are aware of how your daughter who passed away spent her last hours, there was XYZ issue. But that was never mentioned.
Right, right. So at this point, how is the family feeling about justice being denied? Like, and you mentioned the federal charges. Would that be something kind of like a civil case that could go forward on behalf of the family, or no? It would have to be up to the official authorities to do something in federal court.
Okay, I think you asked me two questions. How is the family feeling? And they're devastated. I think that as any family, as any US citizen going through this, it's very traumatizing, because you think that you have a safety net in your government, in your State Department, in your consulate, and they did not find that. And so they're very distraught by that. Then they're mourning, burying, adjusting themselves to a new dynamic without Shanquella, who was a very important part of their family, but also having to advocate for justice for her at the same time, which no family is trained for that, to have to go in front of the media, to have to deal with the FBI, to have to hire a legal team, to have to deal with social media, to have to deal with people's opinions and journalists and all of that stuff. So anytime I have the opportunity, I always publicly applaud them and say how much I admire them, because it's true, because it's such a difficult thing, and something that based on my experience, only Black families have to go through in these situations, where they have to mourn their loved one and at the same time become an advocate for social justice for their family member at the same time, which is a lot, during a mourning period, during a period when you should be allowed to privately deal with your feelings and emotions, traditionally. So that's kind of how some days are better than others, and some days are very difficult. We talk almost every day, and we've become very close over time. So now we joke when people say they have the same last name but no relation. I'm like, we are like family at this point. With respect to the charges and whether or not there can be a civil case, we are pursuing, investigating, looking into a civil case. We're working on that right now. In terms of the federal charges by the U.S. authorities, they have declined charges at this time. Which, again, I want to be clear that the feds in the United States in Mecklenburg County in North Carolina saying they're not going to file a murder charge does not prevent Mexico from moving forward with their charges. The issue is the same individuals, US authorities that would be responsible for a transnational criminal case, meaning the FBI, the US Department of Justice, and the State Department, would also be responsible for ushering in through diplomatic channels the Mexican extradition packet and approving it. And so that is where the dog leg is right now. That's what we're fighting against right now. That's why we had the rally and the gathering a few weeks ago in order to get the White House on the same page, because their kind of position prior to the feds making their announcement was, well, we can't tell you anything because the feds are investigating, so we don't want to compromise the investigation, which is a fine answer. But now that the feds have declined to file charges, the White House certainly has a responsibility to the family to look at the extradition packet from Mexico and get out of the way and permit that process to go forward. And that's where the dog leg is right now.
So, what can we as American citizens who are looking at this, what can we do to help in this process?
I think the main thing is to keep the pressure on the State Department and the Department of Justice, because it is a bureaucracy, right? So they're getting all their documents and all their paperwork, and I don't make excuses for them, but it is not being prioritized. And it's not being prioritized because it's not. And so, unfortunately, as I was alluding to earlier, it's always our duty in cases like this, as we've just seen in AJ Owen's case. We have to advocate for our loved ones. We have to advocate when we're victims of crimes in order to get the same treatment as any other United States citizen. Yes, extradition can take time. Natalie Holloway's case, she's just now, who passed away, the person who perpetrated her murder is a national abroad, and they're just now being extradited to the United States. That took a while. The issue, I think, here is that the family is not getting the answers with respect to the process, with respect to the prioritization, and they deserve those answers, and they have not gotten that. And so that's what we're pushing for now. So I always say, and I will put back, and I have it on my YouTube page, I have it on my Instagram, it's on Until Freedom's Instagram page, and Tamika Mallory's page, and Attorney Ben Crump's page. The specific people department, the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Department of Justice, tweet them, tag them, and let them know, like, we didn't forget about this case. We're not going to forget about this case. Don't let it fall through the cracks. We understand the process enough to know that the ball is in their court. They have to now approve the extradition document so that process can move forward.
And I appreciate that explanation. Sorry. Okay, so I was going to ask you something. Oh, yeah, you brought up Natalie Holloway, and I too saw the news about the person supposedly, it's like you just said, she's been missing. She's just been missing. They haven't found a body or anything, but they continue to try to look for her and try to charge people. And what about this? And let's do that. But a person,
right,
a Black woman whose dead body, we see that obviously somebody did something, and we have to continue to advocate for ourselves while grieving. It's just, it's just sad. And then you mentioned the case of the young lady in Virginia, I think it was.
Ocala, Florida.
Ocala, Florida. Shot on the other side of the door, and then the sheriff says, well, we have to see if it was, stand your ground. It's like they get the benefit of the doubt, but it's just so disheartening at what we have to do, but at least you have told us what we need to do, and that's just to let them know that we haven't forgotten and we won't let them forget Shanquella Robinson and the justice that her family deserves. And so at this point, so it's just a waiting game, basically.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a waiting game. I think that there's a lot going on our end behind the scenes in terms of battening up the hatches for the civil case, in terms of working on the White House and the administration and demanding a high level of diplomatic intervention. That obviously takes a lot of energy because it's the highest authority, in our country, dealing with them, meetings with them, correspondence and all that stuff. So we're working every single day. That's why I was being tongue in cheek saying never not working, but we honestly are never not working. You see my law partner, Benjamin Crump, literally never not working. So, it's a situation where for the families that I work for, that we work for, we have to create the path to justice. We have to create a way for the families to be heard and for justice to be served. We have to create that. And so that's not something that we could, there's no book for it. There's no treatise. There's no class in law school for what it is that we're doing, in the sense that, when I went to law school, I learned about the Constitution. Obviously, I learned the history of the Constitution in terms of that Black people were originally not considered full people, which was a very tough day for all the Black students in my law school class. But then you learn the evolution and that we're all supposed to be treated equally. And so that's why I consider this to be the most important work of our time, forcing the United States to live up to its creed, forcing the issue of equality for all of us. And so it's an honor to me to do the work and to be here and be able to contribute to that. I do always say at press conferences that I would like the United States to just go ahead and treat us all equally so I can be out of business in terms of civil rights litigation. It hasn't happened yet, but honestly, that's what I work towards every day.
And so we thank you for your work and for your time, and we will certainly keep abreast of what's going on, and hopefully we will hear something that you will have good news to share with us. That it's justice is we know sometimes, and of course if you don't demand it. If we don't demand it, it probably won't happen. But at some point, if we stay diligent, her family and you as their attorney stays diligent, that something will come of it. In the meantime, and then just one last question. So we see that I also saw something about how the Cabo Six, they're being received in the community. When they show up in the community, they are, it's like sometimes they get into fights or people fight them. Sometimes when families have loved ones who were killed or something happens to them, the family ends up coming out saying things like, be nice, we don't want any violence, that type of thing. So that's why I'm going to ask you, how is Shanquella's family feeling about how the Cabo Six is being received by the community at this point, when they are showing up and maybe people feel like they are defending Shanquella and her family's honor by fighting them or confronting them?
Yeah, I don't think they condone violence or bullying of any kind, but I also think that the individuals who are present, the person who took the video, the people who are on the audio, owe the family, right? They owe them the respect of having a real conversation about what occurred, which has never happened. And so I think it's what was the case with the young lady who was hitchhiking with her boyfriend? I apologize that her name just went out of my head. And she passed away, or he allegedly murdered her, and then he went home. And now the family of the girl Gabby Petito, the family is now suing the parents of the son or her boyfriend, saying that they had information, they knew where her body was, or they had more information about what the son did, and they never shared it with the family. There's family members of the individuals who went on the trip. They may or may not know things, but to me, it could be anyone. And out of respect, it would be a conversation, especially if, based on their position, it had nothing to do with them. Then why wouldn't they have that conversation and give that respect to Salamandra and to Quilla and to Mr. Robinson to say, hey, listen, this is what happened during her final hours, and we're absolutely sorry, but this is what happened. They haven't had that. They haven't given the family that respect.
Right. Right. I agree. That's the least that they could do, and especially the one who called him or her friend. But like you said, you don't know people, and we use that term loosely. And so yeah, we just need to be more aware and more protective of our personal space and who we spend it with, because we never know what ulterior motives might be out there. So again, we appreciate you coming on, and we will certainly keep letting the federal government know that we want justice, and we want them to prioritize this case like they do so many others.
Right.
All righty, ma'am. Thank you so much. And you have a great rest of your evening. It's time to clock out now.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye. Thanks.
So that was Sue-Ann Robinson. She is the attorney for Shanquella Robinson's family. And we were just talking about the latest updates. So we were also multicasting on her YouTube page as well. So you can see this, it'll be recorded, you know how YouTube works, and it's on my YouTube page as well. But if it was your family, I always try to think, if it were my family, what would I want to be done? If it was me, what would I want to be done? And that's what keeps me in the game, trying to interview people and find out stuff. So thank you so much for your well wishes, and we'll see you next time. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know.